Hello, shalom, and welcome to the Wayward Souls Study Channel. My name is Evan, and this video will be the very first installment of my World of the Word series, a series where we look at the world through the lens of the scriptures, rather than the other way around. Our topic today is magic. As a disclaimer, I do not own any of the media content used in this video, and the opinions expressed are solely my own. I'm not trying to make any money off of this content. Also, this is going to be an in-depth study, but nowhere near as comprehensive as it should be. I'm going to try to keep it simple to maintain your interest. If there is enough interest in a deeper look at all these things, I'll upload a lecture some other time. All right, let's begin. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about magic? Maybe it's stage magic, magic tricks, sleight of hand, and the art of illusion, like this.
Game to play.
Whoa!
I'm not taking the ball, dropping it in my pocket. I am not taking the ball and dropping it in my pocket. It's rare that I'll pick it up at all. I might pretend, but I'm only pretending. I never really pick the ball up off the table. It's the illusion of my hand moving that makes it look like the ball comes off the table, but I never... Am I going too fast?
Or maybe it's the type you see in movies and video games, like this.
To make an object disappear, tap it twice. Say, oh dear. Oh.
Sorcerers of antiquity called the use of this language spells. But if that word offends your modern sensibilities, you can call it a program. The source code that shapes reality.
Throughout fiction and fantasy, the depictions of magic are near limitless in their scope. For an example, here's a small list I compiled searching around the internet for different types and categories of magic. These are the two main ways people think about magic, and both of them are forms of entertainment. But is this really all magic is? Speaking to my brothers and sisters in Messiah, the scriptures talk about magic. Within the writings, it's called witchcraft, sorcery, enchantments, and so on. It's talked about as being very real in both theory and practice. I think that fact alone should prompt us to go on a search for answers. After all, we shouldn't be ignorant of any matter, big or small. Magic is not just found in our media and entertainment. In fact, the practice of magic has been found on every continent and just about every culture on Earth, with its history going back thousands of years. Brothers and sisters, I'm not going to lie. This study was immense. Were it not for the grace of the Most High, I am not sure I would have finished it, but praise be to Yahuwah, because He is not the author of confusion, and He has given us His word so that we might understand it. Hallelujah. So, to start this study, we gotta look at the word magic itself. Here we go. Our first definition is the art of producing illusions as entertainment by the use of sleight of hand, deceptive devices, etc. A lettered men, conjuring. The second definition is the art of producing a desired effect or result through the use of incantation or various other techniques that presumably assure human control of supernatural agencies or the forces of nature. The etymology of this word goes back to the late 14th century as magique, art of influencing or predicting events and producing marvels using hidden natural forces, also supernatural art, especially the art of controlling actions of spiritual or superhuman beings. But this word goes all the way back to an old Persian word, magush, from a certain root, which means to be able or have power. As an interesting side note here, the term black magic is from around the 1500s, and it's in the sense that black was considered the color of sin. Meanwhile, the term white magic came from around the early 1600s and was used for something called theurgia, which in short is white magic, and it is a divine work, a miracle, magic, or sorcery. So good magic. Okay. These definitions grant us the understanding that magic is considered an art form which is supposed to produce an effect through the use of some kind of medium for the purpose of either to deceive somebody or to entertain somebody. Okay? So now that we have a definition and a little bit of background about the word magic, we're going to go back to that list that I showed at the beginning that I was able to compile from the internet. It is said that there are no formulas for complex systems due to the nature of how uncertainty can come in and complicate things. So to help myself out, I decided to run that list through an AI assistant and asked it to do 3 things. The first was to tell me what the problems with the list itself were. The second was to, based on the list, tell me what magic is not. And the third was, in light of the provided information, tell me what magic actually is. So the first answer, most of what is listed on that list overlaps heavily, contradicts itself, or has no consistent rules for interaction. Many systems rely on faith or belief. Interesting. Answer number 2, this list proves that magic is not, this is what it's not, a single thing, empirically verifiable, a coherent system of reality, a consistently falsifiable or internally stable framework, limited by medium, bound by conservation laws, tied to a specific mechanism, constrained by energy conservation, entropy, or physical limits, purely about power, just force or energy, objective in the same way physical phenomena are, a unified category. So that's all the things that magic are not. Answer number 3, if you strip away the fantastical, what remains is interesting. Magic often functions as a language for describing the unknown, a projection of human intent onto systems we don't control, a narrative shortcut for causality, a symbolic framework for power, transformation, and uncertainty. So in that sense, magic is not a force, it's a model. Very interesting. But in order for us to truly understand what that means, we're going to have to look at the word model. All right? The word model goes back to the 1570s. Likeness made to scale, architect's set of designs. That should be pretty familiar to us. Also in the sense of a standard for imitation or comparison, the thing or person that serves or may serve as a pattern or type. You could even include that in ways like, oh, he's a model citizen, upstanding. This is the kind of person that a citizen should be like. Getting into the definition for the word model, we see most of the same stuff is still applicable today. 1, a standard or example for imitation or comparison. 2, a representation, generally in miniature, to show the construction or appearance of something. 3, an image in clay, wax, or the like to be reproduced in more durable material. 4, a person or thing that serves as a subject for an artist, sculptor, writer, etc. 5, a person whose profession is posing for artists or photographers. 6, a person employed to wear clothing or pose with a product for purposes of display and advertising. 7, a style or design of a particular product, aka last year's model. 8, a pattern or mode of structure or formation. 9, a typical form or style. 10, a simplified representation of a system or phenomenon, as in the sciences or economics, with any hypothesis required to describe the system or explain the phenomenon, often mathematically. So at this stage of the discovery, we can define magic as a model of a system used to create a likeness of the user's intention, or design, as you could say. So from now on, we're going to refer to this notion as the magic model, okay? Now, if we flesh out the characteristics behind model, we're going to find that it applies often as a metaphor, all right? It's a pattern that follows a pattern, a design based on a design, a model who models clothing fabricated by a designer. They're literally wearing the designer's intent for the clothing. They're there to show you what that outfit could look like on you, right? Models also function as a representation of both the object or the subject and its progenitor, or again, origin. A toy, Toyota Corolla, is a model of the real thing, and the real thing, its make and model, comes from an original design. You guys get it? I mean, even expression, flesh out, demonstrates a metaphor to put meat on the bones or substance upon a skeleton. The idea of building upon an existing framework. Does it make sense? Okay, cool. Okay, so now that we have the what in terms of what magic is, this magic model, we're going to look at who uses magic. The most common titles in use for someone who uses magic are magician, sorcerer, wizard, and witch. So we're going to look at those. Magician, an entertainer who's skilled in producing illusion by sleight of hand, deceptive devices, etc. Conjurer, a person who is skilled in magic. Sorcerer, okay. Sorcerer, a person who practices sorcery, or a black magician. Wizard, okay. Wizard, a person who practices magic. Magician or sorcerer, we got it. All right. And then finally, witch. Here's where we get a little variance. A person, especially a woman, who professes or is supposed to practice magic or sorcery. Okay, no, it's the exact same. So I'm pretty sure we can see the through line that exists here. All of these individuals are skilled in their profession or their art, their craft, and they utilize something to produce a desired effect. Just like a stage musician uses sleight of hand or a specific kind of trick object itself, these people are using something in order to produce their effect. Examples. The witch's stew, a big old pot, right? She combines ingredients in order to produce a potion, something like that. Another example, like a conjurer's seal, or a sorcerer's seal. You draw a circle or some other shape on the ground, fill it or surround it with various things. Here's an example. It fulfills the requirements of a ritual, aka bringing about a desired effect. What we're talking about is a cause and an effect, so there's something necessary to cause the effect. And now once we have that in mind, we can look at this idea of the magic model through a physics lens. Now, what do I mean by physics? Easiest example would be like a battery and a light bulb. In order for the battery to power the light bulb, the required energy has to travel through a pathway, like a wire, in order to reach its destination. The process that takes this energy from the battery to the light bulb is called a discharge. All right, so that's the cause. This stored energy is discharged from its reserve, directed through its conduit, or medium, which is the wire, to produce the effect, illumination. Energy in order to power a light bulb. Does it make sense? So now we got to look at these terms energy and power because they're going to be important in how they relate to the magic model and form a very basic formula as to how these things work. So if we look at energy, we have the capacity for vigorous activity, available power, an adequate or abundant amount of such power. Energy is a feeling of tension, okay, caused by an excess of such power, an exertion of such power, the habit of vigorous activity, vigor as a characteristic, so energetic, the ability to act, lead others, affect, forcefulness of expression, okay? So energy is like the acting force, and according to its etymology, that is proven out. This word in English comes from a Greek word, energos, active, working, so it's the thing that is producing the effect, right? It's the energy. Whereas our definition for power, the ability to do or act, capable of doing or accomplishing something, they say political or national strength, 3, great or marked ability to do or act, the possession of control or command over people. Now this is where we're going to see more of the true definition of power, ability to act or do, strength, vigor, or might comes from around the 1300s, efficacy, control, mastery, lordship, dominion, ability or right to command or control, legal power or authority. So power ultimately goes back to this understanding of the ability to use, say, energy in order to accomplish something. It refers more to the authority or the control. So, for the purpose of our study, we're going to consider power as the apparatus and energy as the substance that causes it to function. All right? Power is authority and control. Energy is life and substance. Now, when people hear the words power and energy without context, they're normally interpreted through an electro-technological lens. Talking about electricity or things that utilize electricity, aka energy, in order to function. A famous quote, known as Clarke's third law, states, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." Interesting and ironic, if you ask me. So to finish up with who uses magic and the examples of how energy and power work, we're going to define the magic user as an individual skilled in the models of magic who uses power and energy to achieve a desired effect. So to sum it up, if we combine our definitions of a magic and the magic user and utilize the understanding of the magic model, we can develop a 5-step or 5-part formula to describe this entire thing. And that is model, agent, medium, energy, and objective. Now, in the light of objectivity, you could argue, and it would be valid to do so, that this formula and the definitions that we've come up with can apply to a broad range of occupations and people and things, and it's a very good argument. For example, McDonald's, right? McDonald's operates off of a model, and that's the fast food business, right? The agent of McDonald's you could consider to be the employee, the worker. The medium by which they are expressing the model of McDonald's is the food, and they are putting in their time and effort or energy in order to fulfill the objective of McDonald's, which is to feed you, to get you to buy their food, for you to engage with them. But here's where we need to be clever and wise. There's one thing that without it, none of this could exist in the first place. Of course, you could argue the model, You could argue the agent, you could argue the medium, the energy, and the objective. They're all necessary to complete this thing. But ultimately, without the idea for a McDonald's, there's nothing upon which this framework can stand. There first needs to be the idea for a McDonald's before a McDonald's can be. The point we're going to discuss next is the medium. Without the medium, there's no way to transmit whatever the model is to the objective. So, for example, masons use stone as a medium, carving their work into it. Painters use a canvas or some other surface, a material that can hold the expression of their creativity. So, what we need to determine is what sort of medium does a magic user use? Well, it would be themselves, of course. They are the medium. When the art or the model is only able to be expressed through the person, ultimately then that model, the model we're operating off of, becomes information itself. For example, a martial artist, a dancer, or a fitness enthusiast, they are the medium. But what ultimately you're looking at is their form, their finesse, their skill, their physique, their movements, what they look like. And all of that came from their own efforts based on the knowledge or the information which exists within them. So ultimately what we're talking about is an element of information theory. The idea that the information is primary. It is the point of origin for any agent or medium or energy to then bring about the end state of. A sprinter has to have something, a technique from which to draw upon in order to improve his own stride. Same thing with a swimmer, their medium being the water or the thing that they're expressing their art in. But again, it all goes back to this idea of a point of origin or a source of information, okay? So in keeping of the expression of an art form through one's body, consider this, our voice. Our voice is the primary means of expressing information next to our bodies and the tools employed by them. So when we hold up the power of our words to the professed power of magic, the idea of bringing about an effect, a peculiar similarity appears. The power to create, the power to destroy, the power to transform, the power to restore, the power to communicate even. Our words and magic are both drawing upon a model, and that is the model of our mind, what is within us, fueled by our own efforts to the end of producing an effect, known as expression. The title of this study, in fact, includes the word abracadabra. Now, while there is no official meaning that is agreed upon, the word is widely thought to come from a Hebrew-Aramaic phrase translated, "I create as I speak." Given the context of this study, magic, if we take this conjecture at face value, we are forced to claim coincidence or connection. I, for one, personally see and believe that there is a connection. Now, in order to determine just how that connection takes form in our world today, if our voice mimics the power of magic, then it holds that the occupation which involves someone who uses their voice or themselves as the primary means of conveying information, those occupations should be the ones that we're looking for in this world. I'm going to look at two that may encapsulate pretty much everything, and that is the influencer and the politician. Starting with an influencer, this occupation holds a specific meaning today in our world because its primary means of existence is due to the internet, but you can see how an influencer doesn't always have to operate on the internet to have the effect that they have. Now, to quote the first paragraph of the influencer Wikipedia page, here it is. An influencer is an individual who has the capacity to shape the attitudes, behavior, or decisions of others through authority, that's power, knowledge, position, also power, or the nature of the relationship with the audience. The term is used in various fields such as media, business, politics, religion, and communication, referring to influencers such as social media influencers, podcasters, public speakers, religious influencers like pastors, writers, newspaper writers, etc., who have dedicated followings in various areas. Now, this is a near perfect match for our definitions, and the model that we have discovered underlies the entire framework of what magic is. The only part that's missing is the need for engagement in order to achieve their goal. These people need engagement. This happens through partnerships, sponsorships, follower funding, donations, things like that. Ultimately, influencers, in the broad sense, are people willing to do whatever it takes to ensure they're profited by your engagement. Now, Despite this previous entry's well-deserved candidacy, the next occupation is far more dangerous, in my opinion, given its far-reaching implications. And that's the politician. Now, we're going to look at definitions in a second, but put simply, a politician is a member of the government who uses their power and influence to forward an agenda within a particular office. Put complexly, a politician is an individual who represents an ideal. They are the spokesperson for a campaign team who work to command influence or power within their field. This influence is achieved by obtaining the trust and loyalty of their contemporaries and patrons as well as the public. The primary driving force or energy behind a successful campaign is funding. Without money, a campaign will not get very far, or will at least be severely limited in its capabilities, its outreach. Everyone on the team dedicates their own energy into backing their man in order to fulfill their needs. So they're all working towards an end state. To acquire necessary funds, politicians lobby the support of potential allies and related benefactors within their fields, usually offering something in return for their cooperation. When a politician has reached the summit of their campaign, they engage in high-profile competitions with rival candidates, we know them as debates, vying for the approval of the citizens in an attempt to seek the throne of office. Once in office, they take their place as a trusted voice amidst their cohorts and patrons, wielding their power and influence to sway opinions and affect outcomes. If all of that sounded quite militaristic to you, there's a reason for that. Don't just take my word for it. Here.
But our language, and I'm curious how this holds up in court, like our language in general is very violent in the United States. Like we're always talking about, like all of our political language uses war metaphors. Just watch any debate for a city council even, and they're going to use metaphors from war to describe what they're doing in the campaign to their opponent or with their tactics or their strategy. It's just this is a country that's been at war for most of its history, and that's just what we're kind of soaked in. And so when you're talking about beating someone politically, if it is illegal to use language related to battles or war, pretty much every politician, I think, would be guilty of it.
Now, this is not an exact depiction or example of the nature of all politicians, but the model they follow is clear to see. Their trade is an ancient one. For example, central government in the medieval era. Throughout the medieval ages, political authority was vested in the monarch. He exercised power, dispensed patronage, raised armies, and conducted diplomacy through a structured network of administrative institutions. Policy was determined by the king and a council of advisors drawn from the elite of society. So now let's look at the definitions for politician. Dictionary.com says, a person who is active in party politics, a seeker or holder of public office who is more concerned about winning favor or retaining power than about maintaining principles. Well, that sounds kind of biased, you might say. Well, hold on. A person who holds a political office, a person skilled in political government or administration, statesman or stateswoman, an expert in politics or political government, a person who seeks to gain power or advancement within an organization in ways that are generally disapproved. What? Well, look at the bias. Well, hold on. From Merriam-Webster's 2025 dictionary, a politician is a person experienced in the art or science of government, especially one actively engaged in conducting the business of a government. A person engaged in party politics as a profession. Oxford's 1989 dictionary says one keenly interested in politics, one who engages in party politics or in political strife, who makes politics his profession or business. Also, in a sinister sense, one who lives by politics as a trade. Are we catching a deeper meaning here? Well, let's consider. We're going to go to Webster's 1828 dictionary. Politician, in the adjective sense, is cunning, using artifice. A politician as a noun is one versed in the science of government and the art of governing, one skilled in politics, a man of artifice or deep contrivance. Now that's interesting. Let's go back even further and look at Samuel Johnson's 1755 dictionary of the English language. Here he says, one versed in the arts of government, one skilled in politics, a man of artifice, one of deep contrivance. Just so we're getting the full picture here, we're going to look at the words artifice and contrivance. So what's the definition? A clever trick or stratagem, a cunning, crafty device or expedient. Wile, trickery, guile, craftiness, cunning, ingenuity, inventiveness. A skillful or artful contrivance or expedient. All right, so then contrivance, what does that say? Something contrived, a device, especially a mechanical one. The act or manner of contriving, the faculty or power of contriving, a plan or a scheme. Further down, something contrived, especially an ingenious device, a contraption. The act or faculty of devising or adapting, inventive skill or ability. An artificial rather than natural selection or arrangement of details, parts, etc. An elaborate or deceitful plan or expedient, stratagem. So, in summary, a politician is someone skilled in the arts of intrigue and subterfuge in order to achieve a desired goal within the government. Alright? So am I insinuating that politicians and influencers in our world today are akin to the sorcerers and magicians of the past, specifically within the scriptures? Yes, I am. In a very real sense, their words create a version of reality that they want you to engage with, and if you do, you become the medium for their expression. Their words are etched in your mind, and if you accept them, they are now your words. You become a part of the framework that they are operating from. Now I have some clips that come directly from the sorcerer or the magician's perspective, so I'll give you in their own words the understanding of what all this is. And now we can draw a comparison and see just how on the money or how far off our understanding of these things is.
What is magic?
The question is from a stage magician, and the question is, what is the nature of magic, or what is magic, or the wonder that it invokes?
The word magic had a long way to travel before making it into English. The earliest citations for the word in the Oxford English Dictionary are in the Middle English of Geoffrey Chaucer. The word was borrowed through French and Latin, ultimately from Greek, where it got its adjective form magikos. But the root of this word wasn't originally Greek. The Greek noun magos comes from an Old Iranian word, magush, probably through Old Persian from Old Median. Ultimately, the word can be traced back to Proto-Indo-European mag, to be able, have power, the source of a number of other English words, such as the auxiliary verb may, might, both the verb and the noun, and machine.
One of the reasons why magic is spelt with a K at the end in some circles is precisely to differentiate it from parlour tricks and illusions in sleight of hand, but also to differentiate it from the magic of fiction, which still clearly confuses a large portion of the so-called magical community, who get into magic imagining that they'll be able to levitate or teleport or cause objects to move through telekinesis and so on.
In a lot of fiction, magic is pretty mechanical. Sure, it may be weird and volatile, but it more or less works how and when you want it to. Drink a health potion, your wounds heal. Recite the magic words, summon the monster. Unsheath your fire sword. Fire. As creatives, it's pretty easy to think of magic this way, but when you break out of the conventions of high fantasy and think more broadly about what magic really is, what we mean by using this word, a confusing phenomenon reveals itself. Throughout all of these systems, fantasy rulebooks, magical laws, it almost seems like the more you know about the magic you're using, the less magical it is.
It's only been in recent decades that scholars have tried to craft objective definitions of magic with varying degrees of success. So, for example, the archaeologist Andrew Wilburn has defined magic as mechanistic ritual that draws on religious practice, sometimes exoticized forms of religious practice, to try to serve personal ends. As for science, magic is deeply intertwined with the history of science. Lots of the famous names from the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment were also super into the occult. And on some level, this makes sense, right? If you're making a magic potion that has a lot of elements of scientific experimentation, expert knowledge, trying to gather ingredients together to try to affect nature, it's here in the 21st century that we have starkly differentiated between science, magic, religion, but for many people in the past, these three categories of knowledge were very blurry and overlapped each other.
And he starts with a very general definition. Magic is the study of the universe, and then the practical use of that knowledge. But wait, isn't that science, I hear you ask? Science is the study of the physical, material aspects of the universe. It uses the measuring standards and implements of the material universe to observe the material universe.
There are two theories about how the world works, and each one depends on a fundamental assumption about what the world is. There's the scientific theory, which says the world is tiny packets of matter squealing along through empty space at close to the speed of light and subject to a certain set of interlocking laws. That's what science tells us the world is.
Most scientists assume, because it is an assumption, that the universe is material and that consciousness arises out of matter. If you get the right molecules in the right quantity and in the right order, that creates consciousness.
How would you quantify intuition as a psychologist?
It can be quantified to a certain extent. To a certain extent, this intuition, for instance, in animals is a material thing. But even then, there is certain phenomena that impossibly can be explained and which seem to transcend, to escape every materialist explanation.
One of the things that a magician discovers early on is that the universe is mental.
Another theory is, and to my mind a much more appealing and even intuitively correct theory, is the world is language. The world is made of language.
Magicians assume that the basic building block of the universe is consciousness, and that matter arises out of consciousness.
If you know the work of Rupert Sheldrake, do you know Rupert Sheldrake? Very famous cell biologist that at a certain moment published his book a new science of life, which said that we actually have a completely wrong understanding of how consciousness emerges in animals and in human beings. He said, like, consciousness is not produced in the brain, it's out there, and the brain is like an antenna which receives consciousness.
Our model of what the world is made of words, and the world is composed of description. Now, in the era before science, scientists like to say people were more epistemologically naive. What they mean by that is they didn't have a clear understanding of the division between the inside and the outside, between what we imagine and what actually is. But if you live long enough, I think you discover what we imagine and what actually is are very close to the same thing.
Because here's where it gets properly weird, right? The human brain thinks, perceives in metaphor. In 1980, George Lakoff and philosopher Mark Johnson published a book called The Metaphors We Live By. And what they argued in the book, based on linguistic analysis, was that metaphor isn't just flowery, decorative, nice-to-have language. No. Metaphor is the architecture of abstract thought.
You can't not think metaphorically. The simple thing, prices rose. They didn't go up there, So first you have to understand the economy as moving from the past to the future. When your graph of the economy is going up, that's a quote, a good thing. More people are earning more money. So what is the fiscal cliff? It's a disaster. It means bad is down, good is up, past is on the left, the future is on the right. So you're structuring this thing metaphorically.
Of course, it doesn't mean very much when it's just a line, but symbolically, these two simple figures are charged with significance. The vertical is the axis of restriction and power. The horizontal is the axis of connection and liberation. That probably seems arbitrary, very abstract, and perhaps even contrived, but it's really none of those. It's a phenomenological fact. You can imagine that if you and I are both standing on the ground, we can reach each other quite easily. We can also reach anything else which is on that same horizontal plane. But if you were on top of something, it would be much harder for me to get to you. The vertical is the axis upon which gravity acts. For this reason, verticality restricts, and horizontality, just by contrast, liberates. If I place a bunch of numbers in a vertical line, I'm probably making a rank-ordered list. The most important item will be at the top, and that's why we say highest ranked or top priority. This makes intuitive sense to us. Put numbers in a horizontal line, and now you can measure things. You can measure things vertically, but it's much more difficult. Try measuring the height of your house, and then try measuring the length. It's much easier to cross a field than it is to climb a hill. Even an airplane can only go up by moving horizontally. A child may be barred from going on a roller coaster by one of these. Verticality also separates things with walls and rifts, while horizontality connects things, as in the case of roads, phone lines, bridges, etc. You can climb this easily. This would be much more difficult. As conceptually trivial as this dichotomy may seem, it in fact carries the deepest symbolic significance.
Now, whenever you say the world is made of language, the positivists object by saying, well, then why isn't it the way we say it is? I didn't say it's the way we say it is. I said it's made of language. And part of the inspiration for my career is the realization that you can get up in front of audiences and say how the world is, and to a small degree, for a limited time, in a limited space, it shimmers and recasts itself and becomes the thing that we say that it is. The mind is somehow a co-creator in the process of reality through acts of language. And language is very, very mysterious. I mean, it is true magic. Notice that when I speak, if your internal dictionary matches my internal dictionary, that my thoughts cross through the air as an acoustical pressure wave and are reconstructed inside your cerebral cortex as your thought, your understanding of my words.
And of course, if we look at physics, if we look at modern physics, that's exactly what modern physics shows. Even elementary particles communicate, like two photons or two neurons, they communicate with each other. There is a material communication, electromagnetic, for instance, communication between elementary particles, but to a certain extent, they can also communicate with each other completely outside of the material world. Quantum entanglement happens outside of the material world. Like an elementary particle, before it is observed, is merely a probability wave, which exists in Hilbert space, which is not a material space. So there is something outside of the material world.
Things are looking up. Why is the future above you? I'm drowning in work. No, you're not. You're at the desk. You're probably fine. Nobody says, well, I've got a large amount of work ahead of me and the difficulty will increase incrementally before eventually plateauing. They say, I've got a mountain to climb.
Human beings are co-partners with deity in the project of being. This is the basis of all magic.
We've got three primary modalities of magic, and that's receptive. Receptive magic would be to gather information, to obtain wisdom that you otherwise didn't have. So this is divination, right? This is astrology and tarot and throwing bones, all those sorts of things.
In other words, that in some strange way, the magician compels nature to behave as the magician desires.
Then we have connective magic, and that is connecting to spirits. But even if you don't believe in spirits as objective beings, you could be connecting to the universe or connecting to nature or connecting to whatever unseen forces you wish to connect to, connecting to the unseen aspects of reality. And then finally, we have operative magic, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Operative magic is causing changes to occur in your environment. So operative magic is spellcasting.
In Hermeticism, it isn't so much put in terms of compel, but the idea is that humanity, human beings, men and women of great spiritual accomplishment, are co-partners in the project of being.
And all we're doing here is scratching the bare surface of what magic is, but we're trying to establish a baseline here. You can change the outcomes of situations in your life just by staying engaged staying focused. Focus on the outcome that you want. You have to believe this works.
Okay, this stuff seems real. Well, how do I do it? What do I do? Which is your question. Well, what are the factors? So since I've made a number of contacts in the magicians world, real magicians, I was able to synthesize 7 factors that were important. And you're right, number 1 was belief. You have to believe that the thing, whatever that practice is going to work. So one of the things that people then ask about belief is, well, I mean, I'm a modern skeptical person. How am I supposed to believe in something that seems antediluvian? And so the answer to that question is, well, if you go to a movie theater and you're watching a superhero movie, you believe that Superman can fly? I mean, part of the idea of the original Superman movie was you will believe that a man can't fly. So what you do when you go to a movie is you suspend your disbelief. Like if you can't find yourself fully believing in something, well, okay, for the next 2 hours, you will suspend your disbelief and you'll be able to accept the idea that somebody can get really angry and turn into the Hulk or whatever. I mean, it's part of what we do. We're used to that. So the same would be true here.
Research published in the Journal of Frontiers in Human Neuroscience, including by Lakoff himself in 2014, mapped what they call metaphor circuitry in the brain, which is when you process an abstract concept, you activate the same sensory motor regions for actual physical experience. The concept of time, your brain reaches for the spatial image of something ahead of you. The concept of social pressure, your brain activates the same regions associated with physical weight on your body. Moral purity, the brain reaches for physical cleanliness, which is why when people feel morally compromised, they're measurably more likely to want to wash their hands.
All right, so to summarize all of the worldly wisdom we've investigated, we who believe in the scriptures should not conceptualize magic as the flashy and performative art forms found in our media and entertainment. Rather, we should recognize that magic is the ability to alter someone's perception of the world. Those who practice magic can affect the lives of the audiences they engage. I could share much more on this topic, and I have so much more I could say about cultures throughout time and the similarities between them in regards to magic, but it is time to get to the scriptures. The last thing I will mention is that throughout all these cultures, specialists who practiced magic and similar crafts are always found higher up in society, or considered authoritative in their fields. That is something we will see throughout the scriptures as well. Getting into the scriptures, we're going to look at 12 primary Hebrew words associated with the subjects of magic, sorcery, and the like. I'm not going to read all of the information about each word, but if you were to follow along on the screen, you could get a better picture of it. I'm just going to read to you the word and the definition for how it is used. The first word is chartom. This is the word used for magicians and describes one who engages in the process of engraving. Words, likely comprehensive in nature, are carefully etched in stone, allowing them to be preserved for eons. Since recording information in stone is not an easy task, it follows that only the most important information was preserved in such a fashion, especially if that information was considered divine. It is easy to conceive that individuals trusted with such a task were held in some form of high regard. The next word is kashaf. It is translated primarily as witch or sorceress in other translations. Its meaning parallels the actions of the hand and the actions of the mouth, essentially equating their functionality. What you do and what you say is what you do. This word mirrors what we talked about earlier in regards to your words and actions are an expression of yourself. The next word is qasam. It is translated as divination or to practice divination, to divine. Overall, this word describes someone who makes predictions about or claims to have knowledge of future events. The next word is nachash. This is an important one. Across its usage, this word is translated as copper, bronze in Aramaic, enchantment, divination, and serpent in Hebrew. The meaning of this word is a little more complex and follows its characters in that it demonstrates the separation between life and destruction. Additionally, its secondary meaning is a reference to life supported by consumption. These meanings are a murky reflection of each other, and that reflective aspect is found across this word's different uses. Think of it like seeing a reflection of yourself in a mirror of polished brass. This is the word used for the serpent in the Garden of Eden, and it holds that this word has a lot more information behind it in regards to the nature of the serpent than what is typically understood in the mainstream. The next word is mikasam or miksam, and it appears to be a literary preference as it is only used twice in the writings of the prophet-priest Ezekiel, and it shares the same meaning as its root, which, as you saw before, was kasam. There's a possibility that this word offers us the priestly perspective on the subject of divination as a practice that comes from somewhere else, or is from another source. The next word is anan. This word means observer of times, and it's translated as one who observes the processes of continuity, or you could say the practice of deriving truth from observing evidence of processes within creation. Today, the world's process for determining truth is known as the modern scientific method. It's not to say that the practices of science are all fruitless, but rather we should be careful about trusting one's observations as truth over what Yah declares as truth. The next word is yadoni, and this is the word that is used for wizard. This word's meaning is knower, or one who has a familiar spirit, so you could say someone who is known or knows familiar spirits, someone who communicates with them. The construction and usage of this word gives the sense of one who meddles with life by doing service to, or in other words, someone who is in league with a familiar spirit and serving them. The next word is gazar. Its meaning is soothsayers, mainly in Aramaic, specifically in the book of Daniel. Its Hebrew counterpart meaning to cut or to divide. This word appears to be more of a title or a slang given to those who were described as soothsayers. Judging by what we have learned about soothsayers previously, it is likely that the soothsayers in ancient Babylon were also versed in the arts of dividing. The next word is khabar, and it is primarily used for charmer. However, it carries the meaning of company, association, band. The characters in this word depict a chief surrounded by family or fortifications. In the same manner, this word demonstrates order and hierarchy, the idea of agreement or association. It illustrates a group acting to benefit their own agenda, and the idea of conspiracy. The next word is lahat. Its meaning is flame, and it's only used twice. The usages themselves being quite revealing and giving us a pretty cool piece of information to ponder when it comes to the nature of the word itself and the kingdom of heaven and all this stuff. I hope to do a bigger presentation on that someday. The next word is lachash. This word is used in several ways. For example, enchantment, eloquent orator, earrings, etc. It means whispering, charming, serpent charming, charms, amulets, whispers, as of prayer. Its construction is pretty interesting. This word depicts being led against or alongside a wall and pressed. The usage of this word demonstrates the act of compelling, a message spoken or not spoken but communicated in an attempt to sway you. The characters within the word convey a force of direction and a barrier. When considering the act of using one's voice against a wall, the account of Jericho comes to mind. What should have ultimately counted as nothing more than a whisper was able to bring its walls tumbling down. The final word is lot. It is used primarily for the word enchantments, but its meaning also includes secrecy and mystery. So those are the 12 terms that proved relevant for my study. I'm going to summarize them really quick. I won't go over everything, but I'll just read the key points. Number 1, Khartoum. Sacred information is the underlying basis behind every system of belief. Even scientific or philosophical traditions which reject religious affiliation have their own respective body of collected texts from which they draw inspiration. Number 2, Kashaf. Sorcery operates off the reality that our lives are tied to each other and that every one of us is responsible for our words and deeds. It is our words and deeds that shape the relationships and thereby experiences we are subject to in this world. We've been over this. Number 3 is Qasam. Divination is the practice of making predictions, claiming something will happen or that something is okay because it has been predicated by signs from above or the depths of one's heart. It is not about whether they come true or not, it is about the belief. Number 4, Nachash. Enchantment bears many forms, but each of them operate off of the system of show and tell. There are many methods and purposes for show and tell presentations. It is the intent of the presenter that directs or misdirects their audience. Number 5, Miksam. The priestly perspective is one that views the inner workings of things. Again, the use of this word only twice in the book of Ezekiel gives us the opportunity to comprehend more deeply his specific usage of it. Number 6, Anan. Observing times is the practice of deriving truth or fortune from evidence found in nature. This can apply to those who worship the luminaries, aka astrologers. This also applies to those who venerate certain stones or plants, or even aspects of our own bodies, like palm readers. Number 7, Yadaoni. Wizards are mediums, summoners, channelers, and necromancers. Their practice involves communicating with the dead or distant through a variety of methods. Number 8, Gazar. Alchemy is an ancient practice of primarily chemistry that lives on today as a refined megasystem of pharmacy. Its next most endeavor was the dissemination of the beliefs upon which it was founded, materialism. Practitioners dedicate themselves to the division, refinement, and transformation of matter, all for various reasons. The beliefs that surround alchemy stem from ancient traditions about the nature of life, its origin, and its ability to be manipulated. This is also a quality of soothsayers. Number 9, Khabar. Conspiracy is one of the greatest threats to salvation. How much chance does a weak soul have against a legion? When men conspire, there is nothing they cannot achieve. Look no further than the Tower of Babel, which required divine intervention in order to prevent. Those who work in the dark will never be seen by blind men. Their works are only revealed to those with light. Number 10, Lahat. This is the word that's only in the scripture twice, and it's translated the first time in Genesis, the second time in Exodus. Smoke and mirrors may represent a flashy show meant to dazzle and distract, just like Pharaoh's magicians did in Exodus, but in the case of the words used in Genesis, the flame of the flaming sword is literally similar to the enchantments used by them. What is the correlation? Their nature? Possibilities range from a fiery performance being equal to a twirling flaming weapon, or a highly intricate form of technology comparable to the security measures of the entrance to paradise. Mere words can carry whole worlds of meaning. Something cool to think about. Number 11, lachash. Influence is an innate part of what we respond to in leadership and people in general. Influence is a projection of power. Identity is tied to influence. Number 12, lat. Secrets are meant to be kept. There is intent in privacy, and they are locked away for a reason. Okay, now that we are armed with the information necessary to be able to interpret these words properly, it is finally time to look at the scriptures themselves. Starting with the word magician, we have 15 results. Genesis, Genesis, Exodus, 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 then Daniel. So, 3 books in total. Genesis, Exodus, Daniel. Genesis 41, the context here is during the time of Joseph in Egypt. Pharaoh had a dream, called for his magicians and wise men. Pharaoh told them the dream, but they couldn't interpret it to him. Of note here is the position of the magicians and the wise men. Pharaoh would have been considered the highest authority within the ruling structure of Egypt, and the magicians and wise men would therefore be akin to his trusted advisors, those who would give him counsel on matters that were important to the state. Later, in Exodus, we see the same setup, the same model, Pharaoh calling on his wise men and sorcerers, and their job was to reassure the Pharaoh and the people that they had the power, they had the control, because they were doing likewise with their enchantments. Now, of note, Exodus 7:11 here, this is the one instance where the word enchantments is that word lahat, the other time being in Genesis for the sword, flaming sword, the Garden of Eden. All the other words used here for enchantments is lat, which, as you know, means secrecy. Interesting that there is a distinction, and that all the rest of the word enchantments mean secrecy. Later we see that eventually the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils. So they couldn't replicate all of these enchantments at a certain point. It was when there was lice. That's when they no longer could do it, and they said, this is Yah's doing. Then these men who were once so high up in Egypt, just like Pharaoh himself, came to the point where they could not even stand before the poor slave Moses. Poor old man, slave Moses. Think of the optics of that. As I was editing this, I realized the optics would be even crazier because not everyone would have thought he was a slave. They would have seen him as the spokesperson for the slaves, but he might have also been a legend in the ears of many of the nobility of the Egyptian ruling class because he was once one of them, and then after murdering somebody, ran off. And yes, the scripture says that those who sought his life were all dead, but that doesn't mean his reputation didn't precede him. Anyways, and then later, Daniel. We got Daniel 1, 2, 3. It's going through here. In all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers who were in his realm. So the context here, talking about Daniel and his brethren, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azaryahu. The king found them better in all of their manners of wisdom and understanding than all of the magicians and astrologers who were in his realm. Interesting to note. Of course, they had the Most High backing them, and he gave them knowledge and wisdom and understanding. They were still among the nobility of the captives who were taken into Babylon. Something to remember there. But again, we have the king, highest ruling authority in the nation, calling on the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans to show the king his dreams. Now, we know the rest of this story, but again, the structure's the same. Specialists in such crafts that we might consider to be supernatural, or we would have considered to be supernatural. But now we understand there's a lot more nuance, and these are ultimately men who are acting as advisors, as counselors, as people who claim to have knowledge of things. But at the end of the day, Daniel was considered a man in whom the spirit of the holy gods, they said, dwelt. And this is later in dealing with the son of Nebuchadnezzar. This is the finger on the wall account. He is considered to be more wise and have more understanding than all the magicians, to the point where his father made him master of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. Man, what would that look like today, right? Moving on, we're going to look at sorcerers. And as we can see, once again, we're going to see some of the same results here. 7:11, called the wise men and the sorcerers. We have a verse here in Jeremiah. Therefore, hearken not ye to your prophets, nor to your diviners, nor to your dreamers, nor to your enchanters, nor to your sorcerers, who speak to you, saying, you shall not serve the king of Babylon. This is before the people went into captivity in Babylon. This is a message from the Most High, speaking to his own people through Jeremiah. Don't listen to your prophets, nor your diviners, nor dreamers, nor to your enchanters, nor your sorcerers. Can you imagine being someone who lived in the nation, thinking that you were just living life and you were the people, you had the truth, you were blessed by God. It's a Christian nation, so to speak. And God is saying, don't listen to your prophets. Saying they're the ones telling you, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. You're not going to have to serve the king of Babylon. You're not going to go into captivity. And then it happened. Something to think about. Later in Malachi, we have another example here. I will come to you in judgment, be a swift witness against the sorcerers and against the adulterers and against those who swear falsely, and against those who oppress the hireling in his wages, so on and so forth. To note here, a swift witness against the sorcerers. So it'll essentially be like a super proof when he shows up that, everything they said does not matter because he's here now. Whatever they told you is not true, and you're going to have to deal with the reality of the situation. The term adulterers also shows up later in conjunction with sorcerers and witchcraft, so it'll be something to note. Moving down, we have Acts 13, following the journeys of the apostles. They found a certain sorcerer who was a false prophet. Interesting. So earlier when we read about don't listen to your prophets and diviners, certain sorcerer, false prophet, essentially the apposition here is equating the two. So sorcerers and false prophets can be and are the same thing. Moving down, Elymas the sorcerer withstood them, seeking to turn away the deputy from the faith. We can see that this man, the sorcerer, was clearly moving against those who were preaching the truth. So if it wasn't clear, it should be that those who are sorcerers and engage in such things, whether they know it or not, are enemies of the truth, seeking to turn people away from the faith. And then finally we have Revelation here. But the fearful, unbelieving, the abominable, murderers, whoremongers, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, the second death. And then outside are dogs and sorcerers, whoremongers, murderers, idolaters, and whosoever loveth and maketh a lie. Remember that verse in Revelation 22. Once again, we've seen that whoremongers or adulterers are considered people in conjunction to sorcerers and idolaters and liars, people who love and make lies. Sorcerers, okay? Remember this word idolater as well. We're going to see it again. Next up is wizard. Got 11 results here. Leviticus is where we read about the instructions that say, regard not those who have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards to be defiled by them. Yah will become an enemy against them. He'll set his face against them. A man or woman who has a familiar spirit or who is a wizard shall be put to death. We know that wizards are people who commune with spirits, commune with the dead. More clarification is given down here with Deuteronomy 18, a charmer or a consulter with familiar spirits or a wizard or a necromancer. Again, this is actually a few words used in Hebrew, a Hebrew phrase which means to inquire of the dead. Overall, in the context of this study, we didn't really talk about the aspect of communing with the dead or the distant, other than in the mentions of our definitions. The scripture confirms that this is a real thing that can be done. The dead or the distant can be reached out to and contacted, and we're going to read a very famous instance of that in this scripture here in 1 Samuel. We'll do that later. So skipping past that, we read an account about Manasseh and how his wickedness, he sacrificed his son to Baal, observed omens, which is another one used for Anan, used enchantments, Nachash, dealt with familiar spirits and wizards. So he talked to the dead, inquired of spirits, wrought much wickedness. Tragic. Thankfully, we see that a man, a righteous man, named Josiah, King Josiah, the workers with familiar spirits and wizards, the images and the idols and all the abominations, the things we read about in Revelation 22 a little bit ago, Josiah put them away. He wiped them out, really. Once again, Chronicle of Manasseh. Here we go. Here's some information for you. And when they shall say to you, seek unto those who have familiar spirits and wizards and who peep and mutter. Shall not a people seek unto their Elohim, for the living to the dead? Translational limitation here for some who might not understand, but essentially he's saying, shouldn't you inquire of the living and not the dead? We have some information that goes in line with what we've learned about people who have familiar spirits. I covered the topic more extensively on my spirit study, but this word here is ob, speaking from the low guttural. That's where the term gastromancy, ventriloquism comes from. And wizards, people who peep and mutter. Interesting. Something to consider about the nature of how wizards, or those who have familiar spirits, could communicate. Once again, we just read in Isaiah that the spirit of Egypt shall fail, Yah is going to destroy everything, and they shall seek the idols and the charmers and them that have familiar spirits and wizards. The rest of that context is, it ain't going to do them any good. And then we have witch. Got several results here. Exodus 22, you shall not suffer a witch to live. That is the official mandate, official position on which the Most High stands. He will not allow these people who practice, this is kasaf, this is sorcery. You will not allow a sorcerer to live. The Most High will not allow a sorcerer to live. Once again, we see it down here in Deuteronomy, through Moshe's mouth. You're not going to find any one of these people. Check it out. So we have divination, Kasam, observer of times, Anan, enchanter, Nachash, or witch. Now, this verse here in Samuel, we're going to get to again. It's crucial. Another account in Kings, and it came to pass when Joram saw Jehu, he said, is it peace? And he answered, what peace? Is so long as the whoredoms, interesting, of thy mother Jezebel, and her witchcrafts are so many. So we see once again whoredoms, adultery, harlotry, and witchcrafts, sorceries, synonymous. Micah, Nahum, and then Galatians. This little burst of scriptures here is pretty cool to look at. And I'll cut off witchcraft out of thine hand, you shall have no more soothsayers. Witchcraft and soothsayers, hand in hand. These are people who divine, who claim to speak the truth, to cast spells and weave malicious works. Interesting. Nahum, because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcraft that selleth nations through her whoredom and families through her witchcraft. Well then, in my spirit study, I also cover the idea of the mistress or the Ba'ala. That is someone who is also in league with a familiar spirit. And then when here in Galatians, everyone should know this is the passage that speaks about the works of the flesh. Idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, quarreling, rivalry, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies. Take all the rest of those words and then compare them to witchcraft, which may seem quite out of place if you hold to the previous understanding of such things. But when you realize that witchcraft or sorcery is the practice of using your words to affect someone's perception of reality, to change how they view the world, and that can affect their behavior. It is hatred, quarreling, rivalry, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies. You could say akin to deceiving somebody, doing something to benefit yourself at their own expense, resulting in hatred, quarreling, rivalry, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies. Do we understand? All right. We do have, of course, other terms: charmers, enchanters and enchantments, diviners and divination. But we are going to move on and read 3 final accounts. These accounts will be definitive in proving out the entire purpose of this study, and we will be able to walk away with, at the very least, way more understanding about what magic really is. I will be zooming through these accounts, so if you have a hard time following along, then I recommend you go and read them for yourself first and then come back. Let us begin.
And Samuel said to Saul, Yahuwah sent me to anoint you to be king over his people, Yasharel. Now listen unto the voice of the words of Yah. Thus saith Yahuwah Tzabaoth, I remember what Amalek did to Yasharel, how he laid in wait for him in the way when he came out of Egypt. Now go and smite Amalek, and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass. So Saul gathered the people together and numbered them in Telaim, 200,000 footmen and 10,000 men of Judah. And Saul came to the city of Amalek and laid wait in the valley. Then the word of Yahuwah came to Samuel, saying, It repents me that I have set up Saul to be king, for he has turned back from following me and has not performed my commandments. And it grieved Samuel, and he cried unto Yahuwah all night. And when Samuel rose early to meet Saul in the morning, it was told him, saying, Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he set up a place, and went around, and passed on, and is gone to Gilgal. And Samuel came to Saul. And Saul said to him, Blessed be you of Yah, I have performed the commandment of Yahuwah. And Samuel said, So then what's this bleating of sheep that I hear in my ears, and the lowing of the oxen, huh? And
And Saul said, well, I've brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and the oxen to sacrifice unto Yahuwah thy Elohim, and the rest we have utterly destroyed. Then Samuel said to Saul, stay, and I will tell you what Yahuwah has said to me this night. And Saul said to him, okay. And Samuel said, when you were little in your own sight, were you not made the head of the tribes of Yasharel? And Yahuwah anointed you to be king over Yasharel? And Yah sent you on a journey and said, go and utterly destroy the sinners of the Amalekites and fight against them until they be consumed? Why then did you not obey his voice, but flew upon the spoil and did evil in his sight? And Saul said to Samuel, I have obeyed the voice of Yahuwah, and have gone the way which Yah sent me, and I brought Agag king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people did take of the spoil sheep and oxen, the chief of the things which they should have destroyed, to sacrifice unto Yah, your Elohim, in Gilgal. And Samuel said, does Yah delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as he does in obeying his voice? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. Rebellion is the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of Yah, he has also rejected you as king. And Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned, for I have trespassed the commandment of Yah, and your words, because I feared the people, and I obeyed their voice. Now, therefore, please pardon my sin and turn again with me so that we may worship Yah. And Samuel said to Saul, I will not go with you, for you have rejected the word of Yah, and Yah has rejected you as king. And as Samuel turned to leave, Saul grabbed him by the corner of his mantle, and it rent. And Samuel said to him, Yahuwah has torn the kingdom of Yasharel from you this day, and has given it to a neighbor of yours who is better than you. The strength of Yasharel will not lie nor repent, for he is not a man that he should repent. Then Saul said, I have sinned, yet honor me now, please, before the elders of my people, and before Yasharel, and come back with me that I may worship Yahuwah, your Elohim. So Samuel turned again to Saul, and Saul worshipped Yah. And then Samuel said, bring me Agag, king of the Amalekites. So Agag came to him delicately, and said, surely the bitterness of death is past. But Samuel said, as your sword has made women childless, so shall your mother be childless among women. And Samuel hacked Agag into pieces before Yah and Gilgal. Then Samuel went to Ramah, and Saul went up to his house in Gibeah. And Samuel came no more to see Saul unto the day of his death. Nevertheless, Samuel did mourn for Saul, and Yahuwah repented that he had made Saul king over Yasharel. The key points to take away from this scripture: Saul was given a commandment. He did not carry it out to the fullest extent as he was instructed, and the reason he did so was because it made him look better in the eyes of those who were with him. He even admits to it, saying he feared the people and obeyed their voice. Also, as Samuel was trying to leave, he said, please honor me in the sight of the elders and of Yasharel. He was more concerned about his public image than the word of the Most High. He was more concerned with how he would be perceived and currying favor than he was fulfilling the true calling that Yah had given him. I think there's lessons here that we can all take away, but as it pertains to our magic study, we are told definitively that rebellion is the sin of witchcraft. With everything we know about sorcery now, to understand that it is akin to rebellion, we're going to see more how that played out from the very beginning and how it'll play out at the very end. So we're going to go and check out the very first instance of this. I'm pretty sure you can all see where this is going. Genesis chapter 3. Now the serpent was more subtle than any of the beasts of the field which Yahuwah had made. And he said to the woman, Hey, has Yah said you should not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, Yah has said you shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, or else you'll die. And the serpent said to the woman, You won't die. For Elohim does know that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you'll be as Elohim, knowing good and evil. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit of it and ate some, and gave also to her husband with her, and he ate too. And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons.
And they heard the voice of Yahuwah Elohim walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his woman hid themselves from the presence of Yahuwah Elohim amongst the trees of the garden. And Yahuwah Elohim called unto Adam and said unto him, Where are you?
And he said, I heard your voice in the garden and was afraid because I'm naked, so I hid myself. And Elohim said, Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree where I commanded you that you should not eat? And the man said, The woman who you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I ate. And Yahuwah Elohim said unto the woman, What have you done? And the woman said, The serpent deceived me, and I ate. And Yahuwah Elohim said unto the serpent, Because you have done this, you are cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon your belly shall you go, and dust shall you eat all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. It shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise its heel. This is the moment the very first sorcery was used against mankind. Another voice, a voice from a serpent, from a Nachash, an enchanter, was able to put words in the heart of the woman to get her to doubt, to question, to consider. Eventually, her opinions swayed her actions. She and her husband ate of the fruit together, and in the moment they were aware of themselves, doomed us all to this fallen state. Something to note about the Nachash: he is said to be the most subtle or the most clever of all the beasts of the field that Yah made. Elsewhere in the scripture, beasts of the field is used to refer to enemies of Yah's people. What we are essentially being told about the serpent is that he is the craftiest, smartest enemy that we will ever encounter upon the face of the earth. Our final passage is in Revelation 13 and will serve as a warning for what is yet to come. Then I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of it, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, its feet were like a bear's feet, and its mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. And I saw as one of the heads were wounded unto death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast, and they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like the beast, and who is able to make war with him? And there was given to him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given to him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against Elohim, and against his name, his tabernacle, and all those who dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the Kodesh ones, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And all that dwell on the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And if any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He that kills with the sword must be killed by the sword. This is the patience and the faith of the Kodesh ones. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and spoke as a dragon. And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he does great wonders, so that he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceives them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he has the power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by the sword, and live. And he had the power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many would not worship it to be killed. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell unless he has that mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that understands count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is Chi Gi Sigma. There is much to pick apart, to inspect regarding this chapter, but the parts we're going to focus on involve the power and authority given to him. He will perform signs and wonders, the likes of which we've most likely never seen in our lifetimes. He'll bring what we call the movies to life. We must take this verse most seriously of all. He deceives them that dwell on the earth by the means of the miracles that he has power to do in the sight of the beast. This person, whoever it ends up being, will be operating according to the highest forms of sorcery. To my brothers and sisters, and to any else who are listening, remember this. The devil, the adversary, our enemy, is the smartest being we will ever encounter on this earth until Mashiach returns. He wants to be God and has already deceived the whole world in thinking he is. Why else would Mashiach say, "He who has ears, let him hear"? Why else could there be people who have eyes and yet do not see? Remember, if the truth of the gospel be hidden from anybody, it is because the God of this world has blinded the eyes of the unbelieving. Stand on your guard and ready yourself for the coming of the Master. If you've made it to the end of the video, I just want to say thank you so much. If anything, I hope it elicits a new fire in you to want to learn more about the scriptures, to truly understand the nature of this world and the things within it. I pray that the Most High will bless you in the revelation of Him, and in wisdom and in understanding. Until next time, my name is Evan. Shalom.